Okay, so my name is Dom and I'm the editor of Soundsphere magazine. I've been for a very long time. I'm also the editor of WrestleSphere, the founder of Wobbling About and Rocking Out, which is a mental health and disability platform tied to my counselling work. I'm also a qualified counsellor as well. It's all surprisingly interlinked. So I was born with cerebral palsy. I was in hospital for a lot of my childhood and also into my teens. I'm supposed to be in a wheelchair part-time. I was in a wheelchair full-time till I was 16, or certainly there and thereabouts. And then because I have had numerous operations to help me stand, to help me manoeuvre in the way that I do, I'm able to now stand up and walk with the aid of 2 sticks. I was told again at university, at college, that I wasn't going to work in radio, I wasn't going to do anything on TV, I wasn't going to be a journalist, I wasn't going to work for any reputable platforms. I have done work with the BBC, I have done work with some of the biggest music publications in the world, Metal Hammer, Rock Sound. I started my career at the gadget publications like T3 and then went on to build something called Soundsphere, which is a platform which supports alternative arts and culture specific to the north of England. So basically that was my first dream coming true, was working with the likes of the 1975, working with Judas Priest, working with Placebo and those kind of bands that I grew up on. Wobbling About Rocking Out came next, many years later. I'd just done a job in America, at MIT, in Boston, Massachusetts, and I was working there through Soundsphere, through an interesting link that had come through the music industry. The Martin Trust Centre for Entrepreneurial Excellence, that's what it's called, and I was doing some documenting of the entrepreneurial ecosystem there. There are many very successful entrepreneurs, as you would imagine, in that sort of setting, and they kind of sat me down, challenged me a little bit and said, you've been working in the music industry for, it would have been about 10 years at that time. Basically, the entrepreneurs at MIT were like, Dom, this is great and everything, but there's not really too much of you in any of this, and we would like to see something more around your disability, something more of your personality. At that time I was thinking about training to become a counsellor, so they wanted to see more of that in my work, which is what birthed Wobbling About and Rocking Out, or WARO for short. It sort of tied into me coming back to the UK to train to become a counsellor. We tell stories around disability. We use those links in the music industry to speak to some of the most prominent musicians and artists who have disabilities, who have neurodivergence, like myself. I have diagnosed ADHD, for example. Music is something that I love, so I wanted to turn it into a money-making thing, and we were able to do that. Because I had that passion for people and stories. The passion for music led to Soundsphere. The passion for wrestling has then led to WrestleSphere in later years. My disability was always something that wasn't, it was a part of me, but it wasn't something that people really knew about until WARO. And I'll clarify that. Of course, if you meet me, you can see it, but certainly in a professional setting, it wasn't even a thing until you maybe met me to do an interview or whatever. But it wasn't a big part of my identity. Now, WARO is crucially linked to that, and my identity has, as I have become a mental health professional and I work with people with disabilities now, WARO has led, again, everything is interlinked. So WARO is constantly building, we're constantly sharing stories, I'm getting other people involved in the same way that I did with Soundsphere, and I have done with WrestleSphere, again, building that community of people who are crucially much more talented than me, who can tell these stories in fantastic ways. So WARO is the future of my work as it develops, and it's led to me doing wonderful things like I've been doing accessibility work for buildings through WARO. I've done again, I've travelled to different parts of the world to championing accessibility, talking about accessibility in a public setting through WARO, and certainly the ideas that led to WARO. The net connections we've made through Soundsphere over the last 14 years have kind of enabled us to build WARO from a mental health and disability standpoint, because we're telling deeper stories around those things. And then of course WrestleSphere, which is the most recent thing. Again, SoundSphere's kind of network has allowed me to do that, to tell those stories of those, world-renowned athletes, some of the biggest, performers in the world. Basically, SoundSphere is at the root of everything. That's the backing. Sorry, that's the base of everything, and then Wiro sprung up from there, and WrestleSphere has sprung up from there. Everything for me is about finding an escapism, finding a community of people. So like basically when I was younger, I was in a lot of pain all the time. I was really struggling with again being in and out of hospital, being cut open. The wrestling was I saw Mankind, Mick Foley, who I believe is one of the more recognisable names in pop culture. He was flying off the top of cells, and he was obviously, I understand it's theatre, but some of that stuff you can't fake. If you go and watch, Mankind, Undertaker in Hell in a Cell, you'll see what I mean. But yeah, Mick Foley was the guy that had the long, scraggly hair. He walked with a little bit of a limp because basically he'd spent a lot of time injuring himself for people's entertainment for many, many years. And I saw that, and I was like, hang on, so this guy doesn't look like The Rock, who was, of course, around at the same time and has gone on to do wonderful things, and that's fantastic. But not everyone looks like The Rock, and I certainly didn't, and I looked like Mick Foley. I knew that there was an aim to this stuff, even though I didn't understand it right at that time, in your early teenage years, etc. I didn't understand necessarily why I was in hospital and what the aim was to get me here. Of course, when I'm 12, 13, 14, etc., you're kind of going, well, why have I got to go and have this injection? Why have I got to be sliced open? Why has that bone got to move from that part of my body to my foot? And why have I got to have metal stuck in me, etc.? So because of a guy like Mick Foley and because of that escapism that wrestling provided me, I thought, well, maybe I can do something similar. So that's how wrestling has always inspired me, and why I want to tell those stories on WrestleSphere. Goth culture and alternative culture allowed me to find my people, so to speak. We didn't look the same, we didn't act the same, and I'd grown up not being able to look the same as everybody else, but that was before I found goth. Do you know what I mean? So I was being bullied or being, comments being said or whatever, but then when I was able to go to college and I was able to completely change, I had a, almost overnight transformation when I had this new start where I was able to leave school, go to college. What was inside of me was able to come out, this person that I'd always wanted to be. I felt confident for the first time in my life because of goth culture, because of growing up on movies like The Craft, because of growing up on movies like The Crow, because of growing up, around music like Nine Inch Nails, for example. Those bands made me feel cool. I am me, but it's just that I needed to kind of graduate from 15-year-old me. It was like, okay, well now I can find my place and find my people. Despite my anxiety, I have elements of depression as well. Obviously that neurodivergence, it is within me, but actually growing up in goth culture has allowed me to be more open about that. And I certainly didn't grow up in an environment where necessarily it was championed to share your emotions and things like that. It was acceptance. It was the first time I knew that I could be cool enough to make friends, to find a girlfriend, to find a partner. It gave me everything, and it didn't matter that I had scars on my body. It didn't matter that I had a limp or that I had scoliosis or whatever neurodivergence. It was I just connected with these people. So I was welcomed by these people, and I was told that I obviously I still struggle with body image to this day, but I was told that I look cool, or that I was you would actively meet these people, have deep conversations, and and just have a little dance, you rock out, I will always give it my best shot, and that is kind of that was birthed in those hospital beds in my younger days. I was like, I'm going to get through this, and then it was, I'm going to go to this club for the first time and have a dance for the first time. I still remember the first time I got on the dance floor, and I didn't think I could do that, and then I did, and then I didn't think I would be able to tour in a band, and I was nervous, and I have anxiety and depression and things, and these are all things that that kind of played on me. I felt that anxiety in my stomach, but I went and did it. So that was a huge part, and still is a huge part of my life to this day. Yeah. when you grow up in a certain culture and a vibe, where, the stiff upper lip thing, is a big part of, where we are in Yorkshire in the north, or it certainly has been in the sort of 80s, 70s, etc. And our parents, grew up around that, and I totally understand and empathise with that. And obviously, like teachers and people that were teaching me at the time, they grew up with that kind of, you might have to work harder to impress, a girl. You might not be able to have that life. And you might not be able to work in the media. You're probably not going to work in that field. You're probably not going to do this. That's probably not possible for you. So I think, how did I believe it? There were times when I did, and there are still times where I struggled. But I'm still going to give it my best shot. It inspired me, and it's obviously, clearly I have the kind of response that I can remember the moment I was sitting in that room where that guy said, you're never going to, someone with cerebral palsy isn't going to work in the radio, in the sort of early 2000s, 2008, 2009, and some of those opinions are still around, but there are globally renowned people with disabilities and neurodivergence, fighting that perception now. And if I can be a small part of that, which changes perception, that's what I hope to do. To those people that said those things to me back in the day, you can't do this, you shouldn't do that, you're not going to have this, it's just not possible for you. Hopefully you have improved your understanding, because we're constantly learning, we're constantly growing, right? So to those people, thank you for the motivation, because I've done everything you said I couldn't do, and I hope you've learned and grown from that experience through your knowledge. My dad was a businessman, a successful businessman. He was able to build, a career from nothing, a business from nothing, and I'm very proud of that. But but my mum was always very empathetic and very emotionally in tune. So I like to think I've kind of hopefully brought those things together, at least a little bit. I grew up around entrepreneurial people. I grew up around people that built something from nothing and were told actively that things weren't possible for them. They might not have had a disability or a neurodivergence, but it was possible for them. And I think that's where that comes from, that drive. It depends on how you look at success. For me, my definition is life experience. What have you seen? What have you left? For your friends and family, what kind of impact did you have on them? As someone that has pushed my body to its absolute limits to travel the world and to see parts of the world I'd never dream of doing when I was a kid, and again I was actively told that wouldn't be a part of my life. I pushed myself beyond my comfort zone to do those things. Basically, on my gravestone, I've often thought about this, it's like, he tried really, really hard. That's basically that's what I like to leave, I think. Many years ago now, the people we surrounded ourselves with were positive, in the main, and really helped us, nurture and build a business, and also helped us, I believe, develop as people. So I think, I would say, it's absolutely the people. You're a product of the people you're around. So, I have you, I have Emma, I have, Gemma as well. All these people that are around me, just in this room, but also, as an extension of that, my friends from, Keene State College in New Hampshire, where I, did some time at, way back in the early 2000s, being able to travel to America for the first time, and very, very privileged to have had the friendships I've had, however long they've lasted for. But the people that are still with me, I owe pretty much everything I do to you, because you keep me motivated, you keep me grounded, and you keep me, pushing on, really. You know what I mean? And I say that as an extension to your previous question. I extend that to my family. I wouldn't be up on my feet, quite literally, if it wasn't for you and for the inspiration and the motivation and the belief you've given me. I would say, you're absolutely a product of the people around you, and I've had some pretty awesome people around me that have helped me, in multiple ways, professionally, personally, and otherwise. I'm very lucky. I'm going to say that I'm very lucky. I'm probably the luckiest person I know to have the people that I do around me, and if it helps, if it helps some other people, that's awesome. The desire to tell stories has always been there. Yeah, I think that's I sometimes I don't look at myself as a journalist, because I'm not doing I'm not necessarily telling stories these days anyway that I don't want to tell. When I had the position at the Martin Trust Centre, I was the storyteller in residence, and I quite like that. You know, I wouldn't say that I am a journalist in the strictest sense of the word. I would say I'm a storyteller, but certainly that desire to talk to people, to engage with people, to learn from people, and to give people a platform. That this didn't necessarily, you know, Soundsphere was built on the fact that I have, you know, family split between Yorkshire and London. Pretty much everything that I do, again, counselling is a helping profession, is built on the fact that I recognise that not everybody has the support that I had. What does somebody do if they can't afford to do that? You know, well, where do they go? Well, they can come to Soundsphere and they can get an internship and a placement and go on to some of those opportunities I mentioned earlier. So again, for me, it's always been about, journalism has always been about telling stories, but then also using the platform that I've developed, telling those stories to help other people do those things, or maybe even tell theirs. Have something that creatively drives you, have something that motivates you, so that when you come home or when you go out, you can do something that creatively fulfills you. If your identity is you're a musician, then absolutely you're a musician. If you want to, you know, if you want to work in an office as well, or you need to work in an office as well, that doesn't stop you from being a musician. That's just another part of who you are. Who's to tell me I should just say I'm a journalist? Who's to tell me I should just say I'm a mental health professional? I'm also a musician. It's an incredibly important part of the counselling process that you are also in therapy. So again, you know, I would not have my ADHD diagnosis, my neurodivergent diagnosis, if it wasn't for counselling. I believe I've learned and grown as a person through the counselling experience, and it's made me a better journalist and a more empathetic person. And I think I now have more empathy for myself and for other people too. My empathy comes from my mum and my family. Obviously, again, my drive comes from my dad, I believe. My empathy comes from my mum. I think that empathy comes, and the empathy to help other people comes from the fact that I know that I'm very, very lucky, and you know, my life could have been a lot. I mean, obviously, it depends on how you define lucky, because I suppose people always stop me, or they challenge me, and they're like, well, yeah, but you know, most people didn't have to spend most of their childhood in a hospital bed being cut open, or most people didn't have to, you know, be told actively that they weren't going to do this, or they weren't going to do that, or it wasn't possible, or be bullied for the way they looked, or, you know, whatever. So there are obviously alternative viewpoints of that, but fundamentally I know that I had, you know, a lot of support. And, you know, if you think that someone with cerebral palsy can't do things, if you're sat there and you've got a perception, then if you take anything from this interview, look at me and what I have done. I've done everything I wanted to do. I've found workarounds for everything, and I've used my network to do those things. If you have a prejudgment on someone with cerebral palsy or any difference, you know, try and look a little deeper. Don't assume with someone with cerebral palsy can't tour the world in a band. I've done a lot of that. You know, don't assume someone with cerebral palsy or any disability can't be a journalist, because that you know, I've made money doing that. You know, don't assume. You know, do some research, learn, grow, develop. You know, try and improve understanding. On a personal level, it's learning, growing, evolving, doing the things that I'm passionate about. So a bit more travelling, you know, building WrestleSphere up to a point where it's you know, where it can help more people because it's in its infancy. So I think building Waro is a huge priority. More accessibility work, more bands. You know, I'm looking forward to getting back out on the road with my, you know, my noisy bands that I'm going to do, my various noisy bands. So I think, yeah, just enjoying my life, you know, enjoying my life experience, and really trying to, I guess, live in the moment. I talk to a lot of people about living in the moment in various contexts, trying to appreciate where I'm at, you know, because if I actually do that and I'm sat here right now trying to do it, I'm like, yeah, you know what, this is pretty awesome. How cool is this? Most everything for Soundsphere is Soundsphere Mag, so Soundsphere and then MAG at the end, WrestleSphere. Again, if you search WrestleSphere, you'll find our stuff. Waro, it's either Wobbling About and Rocking Out, full name, or Waro. Yeah, you can find me on there if you want to get in touch. If anything has pricked your interest or whatever, then yeah, get in touch and we'll, you know, we'll do what I can to support and help if that's what you fancy.